Hello there, and welcome to Gooner U, where there are no degrees because the learning never stops. I'm Dove, a TA here at Gooner U, and my friend Keith is our stalwart Distinguished Professor of Arsenal and Football Studies. This week featured Premier League match number 23 away at London Stadium against the Hammers. Hello, Keith.
Hello, Dove. How are you doing?
Doing well. It's not often that you get a 6-0 blowout for your birthday, so thank you, Arsenal.
Yes, enjoy that. I have to say I didn't realize the question of would we see more Arsenal goals or shots of Taylor Swift at the Super Bowl, that those numbers would be so close together, but here we are.
Yeah, right. Here I was like thinking I was going to spend the day annoyed that I couldn't go where I wanted to for my birthday because it was going to be like a mess with like tons of people cheering for the Super Bowl and I wouldn't be able to actually enjoy my time there. And Arsenal balanced it out later on in the day when I caught the replay. So
yeah, you're welcome from North London. I guess we were in East London today, yesterday. So
sure, I'll have to take your word on that one.
Yeah, West Ham is East London because of course it is.
Yeah, so before we get into the week's topics, I do have some follow-up from as I listened back to the last episode, some questions, and I'll share with our listeners. A lot of times what ends up happening is as we're listening live, for one reason or another, whether it's one of our internet connections dropping out or just because I'm typing, I don't always hear everything that you're saying live, and I don't always get the chance to fully digest it until I've heard it live, and then when I'm editing. And then these all came up while I was listening back to the published episode after that. So my third pass. So,
right.
So if you guys want to join in and listen 3 or 4 times, it'll certainly help our numbers. So
yeah, just keep clicking play. Just keep doing it.
Just listen to it on a loop while you go to sleep. So anyway, so first question. You had used the term brace in reference to, I forget whose it was, I guess Saka last week, his 2 goals. Is that a term of art in sports generally, like a hat trick, but for 2 goals instead of 3?
So more or less, it's it's a little more English in style, a brace, but you'll hear it now and again in American sports. But yes, it's essentially a slang for 2 goals.
Okay. And when we were talking about Jurgen Klopp's departure from Liverpool, you had said something about, when he is ready to return to management. And I just wanted to confirm. So being like having manager in your title, like being the head coach or manager, general manager, whatever the term that we're using is for him, that's clearly part of the management. And that was what you were talking about, is back to his current role at a different team, not like moving up and doing something else within the organization, I'm guessing, right?
That seems to be the presumption. Well, okay, there's a couple of different answers to that. The first is in terms of when we say return to management, typically, yes, it would mean he becomes a manager. And it's a little weird because if we were to say a manager like a baseball, you just go, oh, okay, yeah, the guy in the dugout who fills out the lineup card. Whereas opposed to the general manager who wears a suit, sits in the office and makes phone calls for trades and that sort of thing. In soccer, they tend to have the difference. We've talked about this, I think, with Arteta a bit, where he started as the head coach, responsible more for just coaching the first team, but as the manager has a slightly wider permit within the club. Although player movement contracts and things like that are still that's Edu is the director of football in this sport. In this sport, that's the title. I mean, presumably with Klopp, because of his resume, because of his background, because of the style he plays and the needs he has in terms of players, he's going to be a manager. Jurgen Klopp does not be a head coach. Head coach is kind of a lesser role for someone maybe doesn't have that fuller experience. And at this point, if a guy like Klopp is managed, is going to come back, he's going to be a manager. He's not going to sort of take the step back to the head coach position.
Right. Yeah. That I figured. Sure. So another. Not really question, more kind of like, whoops, my bad. So when we were talking about Matt Turner and you were talking about the history of the United States turning out lots of goalkeepers internationally, like being a kind of goalkeeper factory, again, for one of those reasons I cited earlier, missed that you were talking about the United States and thought you were talking about Arsenal being like a development club that produces good goalkeepers to go elsewhere, like Matt Turner ended up doing. So that was where that question came from when we were talking about him being ours. Like, no, we were talking about our countries, not our clubs.
Right. I mean, I move easily between the two of them, obviously, because in my mind, I know exactly what I'm talking about.
Right.
Arsenal doesn't have I wouldn't say Arsenal has a reputation for that. On the other hand, we should actually point out there are actually, at least off the top of my head, 3 former Arsenal keepers start in the Premier League. And not only you have, I don't know how much of a starter Turner really is at Forest, although they apparently have 4 keepers and none of them are any good. Which for Turner is sad, but at least he keeps playing and hopefully that develops. But also Bernd Leno is at Fulham, and then also Emi Martinez at Aston Villa won the FA Cup with Arsenal back in the COVID season. So then, plus we have Aaron Ramsdale on the bench. So there are actually a surprising amount of former Arsenal people around.
Martinez is Argentina's number 1 also, right?
Yes, Argentina's number 1, and Leno is. Leno has been in he's not really in the conversation for German number 1 because that's Manuel Neuer. And it has been for a while. But Leno's a name was popped up as potential in Germany, and Raya for Spain. I mean, when you're Arsenal, you tend to draw. You're pulling on guys who probably could be starting for their countries. Raya has ambitions of being the number 1 for Spain. We do also have Karl Hein, who is Estonia's number 1.
Okay.
for what that's worth.
When you say. Oh no! Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm gonna say for what that's worth, but good for him. I hope he has great success in that position.
No, you just reminded me of an SNL bit from the 90s. They're doing this show called Sprockets out of East Germany, and there's a character called Karl Heinz. That is his first name. Anyways, so one last bit of follow-up. I had mentioned some weeks ago that The Athletic and the Wirecutter were going to be coming to Apple News Plus for anyone who subscribes to that service. As I mentioned, I have it as part of another bundle that I have, the Apple One bundle, where I just get everything that Apple charges recurring revenue for. So that's cool for me because now I can actually guilt-free read The Athletic, know that they're getting paid somehow or other for me reading it without using the reader mode hack. And what that also means is from now on, when you give me links to The Athletic, I will be converting those into Apple News Plus links in the show notes. If you have Apple News Plus, it'll open up an Apple News for you. If you don't, or if you're on a platform that Apple News doesn't run on, Windows, Android, something like that, it should just redirect you to their website. When I tested it, it seemed like that's what it does. So please, if that's bothering anybody, including you, Keith, let me know and I can change my practice. But I think that makes it the most convenient for everybody. So.
I mean, I have the Athletic subscription, so I'll just read them as is. So,
if you're ever looking back through the show notes and going, what was this one, and something like that. So anyway, what's going on with the international cup competitions that have drawn to a close?
Those finished up this weekend. We mentioned the finals, and actually, in both cases, it was the hosts who came away with the trophies. Qatar converted 3 penalties to beat Jordan. To win the Asian Cup, which is the second consecutive Asian Cup. They won the previous edition of the tournament, which I think was back in 2019. So that pre-COVID world. Then in AFCON, the hosts, Ivory Coast, 2-1 winners over Nigeria. The Nigerians beat your South Africa in the semis. And what, by all accounts, was apparently a really, really good, really tense, the kind of game you'd want from a semifinal. Real excellent game. South Africa bounced back from, we'll throw this in for your guys, Bafana beat DR Congo on penalties, 6-5 to finish in third. So good for South Africa to finish in third.
Yeah, nice. That was the consolation match.
Yeah, which is not, you don't always, it's interesting. Sometimes those exist, sometimes they don't. But I guess AFCON has one, so if you're in it, you might as well win it,
So how common is it for finals or semifinals to go to penalties? It seems like I've been seeing that happening a lot recently for some reason.
That's a good question. I don't know how many, it feels like it's one of those things that sort of comes in spurts, at least to me. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, part of it is just the nature of that setting. And we mentioned the Super Bowl. You may have seen some of this in the Super Bowl as well. Obviously, that game was in overtime, which was rare for the Super Bowl for the American football. But there, in a sense, because the stakes are so high, things get really tense and guys get nervous. And from a tactical perspective, a lot of times it tends to be kind of a boring game because it's very conservative. Everyone hangs back. You don't want to be too aggressive, especially in international soccer where the tactics are much more simplistic. So you see teams be very conservative. And as a result, the games tend to be kind of cagey and boring. And sometimes, if from a manager's perspective, maybe if it goes to penalties, well, we can just flip a coin. But if you make a bold tactical decision and it fails, of course, you're the worst person ever for blowing the tournament. So there's a little bit of self-preservation in that as well.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, well, let's travel to West Ham in East London and get started on this match. I mean, around the periphery, some of the meta stuff. So I watched this. This is the first time watching a match by myself on the Apple Vision Pro headset. It was also in the NBC Sports app, and it was extremely frustrating. And this is just apparently how the iPad app works. Maybe the Apple TV app. I don't know if I've done this before, but I watched the first half in one stretch, had to do something else, including watching the end of a Super Bowl, and then went back to watch the rest of it. And NBC Sports does not keep track of where you leave off at all. So I had to like fast forward my way and skip through like 3 rounds of ads, like the pregame ads, the pre-halftime ads, the post-halftime ads, and then watch the conclusion of the match. But so it was good. I mean, I was able to use a keyboard this time. I had Pages open, I had the match open, and was able to switch back and forth between them. So that was a good experience. I was able to set up my environment. So I was like watching it on a lake. It was very peaceful and serene. It was a good mood to watch all the all the net flapping as the ball bounced off of it over and over again.
I'm not sure relaxed is quite the atmosphere I'd be going for, but to each their own. To each their own. This felt like a take out your frustrations game. Obviously this is the third time we played West Ham this season. First time at their place, that was the Carabao Cup. We were poor and lost deservedly so. And then in the league, we played them at home. Was that right after Christmas?
Sounds
where
right.
we dominated the flow of the game, but couldn't really get a goal. And they scored 2 goals, including that one that may or may not have been out.
Mm-hmm.
But, again, a lot of poor defending and basically lost a game that we arguably shouldn't have. It's someone, if we're looking at the advanced statistics and expected goals, apparently the expected goals between that game in December and this game here were apparently very similar. The difference was we took our chances this time around.
Yeah.
And I think there was a little bit of we should have done this before. We should have done this twice before. We're not going to leave any room for any sort of question.
I mean, if you divide, I know it doesn't work this way, but if you divide our goals evenly between this game and last game, we would have won both.
Yeah. There was, I mean, and one of those, because I've seen some games like this on both ends. In big blowouts, there is kind of a sense that lucky is not quite the right word, but you get the bounces, like goals that you maybe wouldn't get. I'm thinking more of games where I've been on the other side of games like this. There was one Arsenal lost at Old Trafford 8-2. That was the game that precipitated the signing of Mikel Arteta as a player, along with Per Mertesacker, who now coaches the youth teams, and the BFG, the big friendly German. But that one, or I remember with New York City watching us lose 7-0 at home to Red Bulls, which was very, very unpleasant to be in person. But it's both of those games are one of those that, if you look at the statistics, I mean, yeah, you should have lost, but probably should have been 3-0 or 3-1. But then you watch the game and you see on the scoreboard it's 7-0, 8-2, and it's, there's a little bit of that. But also, we're better than West Ham, and we were a lot better than them on the day, took the chances, and sometimes you win 6-0. It's just...
Yeah.
Sometimes you just break the other team's spirit before halftime.
Yeah. I what I liked about this is the modest goals, if you call them that, right? The early ones that, were kind of innocent and like, maybe we'll win, right? Before we knew which direction the wind was really blowing for this match. They came from set pieces. Well, sort of. The penalty was in there too, but like the non-penalty goals were from set pieces, right? Which has been one of our strengths this season, as is pointed out by the commentators on every single occasion. And like we convert a lot of set pieces into goals, and we had the corner, we had the free kick that was in a similar position to a corner way toward the end. We had the third goal, I think, was like the one that's toward the top of the penalty box a little bit. They're all kind of similar, like crossing it in and you get a header, and that's been our strength. And then we kind of, the other ones from Trossard and from Rice, those all kind of filled in the gaps once we really were firing on all cylinders and it completely demoralized them. But
yeah, I think you're right in sort of distinguishing there the set piece goals and the open play goals. I mean, the set piece ones, obviously the opener corner from Rice. We notice Rice has been taking our corners. It feels like a recent change over the last few games, and it's working. He's really good. Declan Rice is really good. Just putting that out into the universe once again.
And what a place to demonstrate that.
We'll get to that, but he'll. Yeah, he's done well with the corners, but yeah, I mean, for all of the complaints people have had about our set piece ability, we lead league in set piece goals. Our set piece defending is really good. The mistakes always stand out, but actually we're much better at that, frankly, than anybody else. And we went through a long stretch there. We struggled to score, or a long stretch where we had struggled to score goals. We have like the second most goals in the league. We have the second best goal difference in the league, one behind Liverpool, tied with City. Now, winning 6-0 will do that. But, that was, I think, part of that, and being able to convert those opportunities. And with Saliba and Gabriel, good to see Saliba get on the scoreboard. Gabriel got the header. Although, honestly, we were watching, we all thought that second one was actually Kai Havertz.
Yeah.
Because if you look, it's Havertz who runs away first, and he's sort of leading the line in the celebrations, because the camera focused on him, but then you watch the replay and go, "Wait, no, that was Gabby."
Gabby got the goal. I thought the same thing. Yeah,
but yeah, he to be able to keep doing that feels good. And then also there's Saka and the penalty. I mean, it's not a set piece, but obviously it's not a play from
right.
dead ball. I don't know. I get the review for offside. It was the right thing to do, and obviously it was the right call.
Painful.
I don't know what they were doing, though.
It took so long. They were looking at it for so long. I looked at it for 2 seconds, and it was so clear he was onside. What were they looking at?
I guess it's just... I realize we didn't talk about this pregame, but now I'm certainly inspired to rant a little bit. Because I hear a lot about this, and there's a lot of pushback against VAR and the use of replay from sort of European fans, English fans, and I get it. Like I get they can it's. But to me, the problem isn't the replay itself. The problem is the way it's being thought of, mostly by the officials. Mm-hmm. Like again, we watched American football, who has had a replay system for 25 years. And okay, do they have weird moments? Absolutely. Do they have times where the replay seems to go on too long? Sure. But by and large, there's a system. Everyone knows how it works. Everyone accepts what it's trying to do, and they just do it, and we get on with it. And I feel like there still isn't quite an acceptance from the officials about what the point of replay is and how it should be intended to be used. And so as a result, things kind of drag on. They're not really sure what they should be doing. It's okay. In American sports, see this all the time, right? When the referee comes out and he said, after replay, you'll hear them say, the call is confirmed. Or I think they say something like, the call in the field stands. Like there's even a difference in the language. It's like, well, we weren't sure, so what's happened on the field is what stays. And that's the default. You can't prove it otherwise. Okay, leave it go. Mm-hmm. But for something like offside, offside doesn't make any sense. It's the clearest possible decision they could make, given the way they're using VAR, right? The whole point is you have the lines, you draw them, and, well, there it is. It's either on or off.
Yeah.
And so I just feels to me like there's this resistance to these kinds of things. And I think if the officials it strikes me as if they were a bit more willing to embrace what it's trying to do, not point out where they're wrong, but rather instead, identify and address mistakes that are made. And that seems to be kind of the difficulty there. It's not about proving referees wrong. It's about just making sure that when they make mistakes, as we all do,
Of course.
those get addressed and we can move on with it. And it feels like there's a little too much conversation that goes into each particular call. And it's like, look, if it's a judgment call, just make the judgment call. You're the referee, you're the guy in charge. You say that's not what it is. Say I don't see enough to change it. Okay. And it just that's what frustrates me about VAR. Again, the penalty was never in doubt. He clearly clipped Saka. You can't do that. Right. Everyone knew that. But for the offside, like, just draw the lines. Just draw. Like there's nothing else to talk about there. That's the part I don't understand. Anyway.
Well, right. And while this is all unfolding, we're not seeing anything. We're just seeing a freeze frame of the pitch in which it looks very clear that they are further up the field than Saka was. And so it just leaves us wondering, what is taking so long?
And you always have to account for, we've talked about perception and, depth perception and, the angles of cameras. And that's all fair. Like, I understand. To me, the benefit of the lines is once you're able to figure out mathematically how that gets drawn, you avoid, like, trying to guess with the naked eye, which I'm in favor of. If we're going to bring technology, let's bring in technology. Let's not guess these things if we can draw them. And, of course, there's a judgment about the freeze frame. Okay, is it... when exactly is the ball kicked? What is the frame in which the ball is kicked? Therefore, where's the position of the players? I get that, but I felt like that's not really what we were getting. So
right.
That's my. And again, I'm also standing in a bar crowd with people. I don't hear all the things they're saying on TV. So perhaps there's something in that I'm missing.
Not saying much. They're pretty much, the commentators were saying the same thing. What are they looking at? What are they doing?
Right. and I feel like that's just part of what leads to a lot of the resistance. It's not that the thing is itself a problem. It's being poorly used. And I think some mindset adjustment, I think, would go a long way to making everybody just feel better about this, because it's not going away. They're not taking away VAR.
Right.
It's not happening. So it's here, it's it's part of the game. We have to get used to it. And I think the more people sort of learn to accept that, certainly including the officials, I think the better off they'll be. Again, how are they approaching what it's trying to do?
Yeah. No, I mean, as someone who works in software, the idea of iteration is nothing new to me, right? You put something out there, you see how it's working, you see how it's viewed, how it's looked at, accepted. You make changes. You keep making changes until it's working the way that you want it to, and evaluate it every so often to make sure it's still working the way you want it to. I don't see why they wouldn't do that, but it seems like they don't, at least not often.
Yeah.
But yeah.
We scored set-piece goals. We got a penalty goal. And then once more for the half, just for the fun of it, Trossard he had a few chances that were just really just kind of way out there. So he finally just gets into one and, pretty subdued celebration. We'll deal with this more a little bit in the second half. But, Trossard seemed a little, I did it.
Yeah.
not quite the, but yeah, also it's 4-0. And then, I mean, really, that's when we broke West Ham's spirit.
Yeah, that's when the mass exodus from the stadium began.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's which got quite a chuckle. I mean, at 1-0, West Ham was in trouble. This is a team that's built under David Moyes to be solid defensively. They're not built to score a lot of goals, be very dynamic offensively going forward. So at 1-0, that's a problem. 2-0, you don't want to say game over. Yeah, 4-0 is not happening. 4-0 is game over.
Well, yeah.
And you saw at times they showed Moyes on the bench and poor guy just looked lost. By all accounts, he's a good guy. I mean, he was the manager at Everton for Arteta. Everyone talks about the influence Arteta gets from Pep Guardiola, obviously, but he spent a lot of time with David Moyes, as a player.
Mm-hmm.
And Moyes is a very defensively focused guy, especially, let me maximize the talent of when he was at Everton, certainly to an extent at West Ham, a lesser talented team. How do I get the most out of these players? And a lot of times that means being solid defensively and try to win on the counter. Certainly when you're playing a big club, I saw when I watched Everton, it was when they played Arsenal. So
Yeah. That makes sense. But yeah, so before we go on to the second half, are you feeling thirsty?
I am, actually.
Well, I've got the thing for you. We talk on the show very often about Liquid IV. So this is the category-winning hydration brand that is fueling your well-being, and their hydration multiplier is the one product you're missing in your daily routine. In just one stick, you get 2 times faster hydration with water alone, along with 5 essential vitamins and minerals. Use it first thing in the morning before a workout, when you feel run down after a long night out, and on long flights. It, of course, has 12 delicious, refreshing flavors to keep your hydration routine exciting, and is made with non-GMO ingredients, as well as being free from gluten, dairy, and soy. I actually have a flavor multi-pack that I'm waiting for the spring season to get underway before I crack open and see what those flavors are like. So far, my favorite is strawberry lemonade. Of course, I love that it's convenient to take with me and that it doesn't leave an aftertaste. And it works. I mean, at the end of a day, or at the end of a competition, I get all sweaty, heat it up, sweaty, and drink it, and I don't feel thirsty anymore. So that's good. If that sounds good to you, you can get 20% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use code Gooner at checkout. That is 20% off anything you order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code Gooner at liquidiv.com. That is Gooner. There is no U in Gooner. There is also a link in our description to make it easier. Thanks again to Liquid IV. So, yeah, I mean, we went into the second half not letting up, and I think that was one thing that I was happy with this result, and also Crystal Palace a few weeks back. We had a 5-0 result with them too. Like, we're not letting off the gas as much after we score, and we talked about that earlier in the season, comparing and contrasting with Manchester City, where like when they get a lead, they just like ratchet it further and keep scoring, keep on the other team. I feel like we're starting to do that more. I'm seeing that more where we don't let up. We don't play conservatively. We keep on going for it.
Mm. No, I think that's right. I mean, I always hesitate a little bit to get too wild with City. I mean, of course, the record speaks for itself. They're obviously good. They have their wobbles. You talk to City fans, they can point to areas where like, this could be better, that could be better. Okay, yeah. But I do think there's a sense that, the big comparison point you're seeing with a lot of people is to Arsenal at the beginning, first half of last season, when they blew through the league. They were exciting, they were dynamic, they'd score. But we've talked a lot this season about how this team is a little more controlled, a little more conservative, isn't doing that same kind of thing. And we worry, of course, because, oh my gosh, we're scoring fewer goals. Although, actually, at this point, we aren't. But I think what you're seeing there is, again, the continued evolution. And, I think some of this is a video game kind of mindset that people bring in. You see this a lot with individual players. Oh, so-and-so got hurt. Well, I'll just swap in the other guy, and he's generally fine. It's a video game. You're pretty interchangeable parts. I think there's the same element of this, tactically, that different tactical shifts or different tactical things take time to implement. And it takes time for the players to get comfortable with them. And I think you're increasingly seeing that. And so that, and again, at this point, the opposition helps. Again, as you said, you get a couple of those quick goals there in the half. It's 4-0. You come out in the second half. I did think there was a stretch, I want to say somewhere in the middle of the first half. It may still have been 0-0 at that point, where West Ham was not ascendant, but definitely, okay, they were stringing some passes together. They were moving the ball around. They were getting possession in our end, potentially pushing. But then you get to the second half, and yeah, we started olaying them in about the 60th minute, which is just toying with them at that point.
Yeah.
And then really just the 2 goals, quickly the 2 goals in the second half. That's a really good goal to see Saka score. To see him, when he cuts in like that, places it well. I mean, that's his goal. That's the kind of goal we want to. And if he's doing that, he's feeling good. And a Saka who feels good is the most dangerous Saka.
Mm-hmm.
It's exactly what we want to see. And then I guess sort of the exclamation mark. Well, actually, not an exclamation mark. It was just a very calm period. Declan Rice with a banger. Kind of
Yeah, that was after like I think a blocked shot or something, or like it was poked away from Odegaard or something. But you see Declan Rice walk up to it. He's like, "Yeah, why not?" And just blasts it.
Just leathers it in. And then of course, I think, as you noticed, I'm sure it was pointed out in the broadcast, a rather subdued celebration from Mr. Rice, the former West Ham captain.
Right. So after the celebration of that goal concluded, and it was brief, yeah, it was a triple substitution, including taking Rice off. And yeah, it wasn't like as much of a like clapping for a long time the whole time he walked off. It was just kind of like a very subtle, like couple claps, and then he continued his walk off the pitch. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's a sense, and I'm sure you heard this in the commentary. I don't know if we've really got a chance to see that in practice, but there's this sort of general sense of, in terms of sportsmanship and gentlemanly conduct in the English game, especially, about you don't celebrate scoring against your former team. Now, granted, there's only so much celebration you're going to do when you're making it 6. Like, that's not really all the conversation about Arsenal and the celebration police and all that. That's not really the moment to go with the full knee slide, But Rice was very, there was not a lot of celebration. It was actually pretty low key celebrating. Sort of deliberately didn't, and you see that a lot. Players, even in big moments. Well, occasionally big moments you'll see it, but the idea of a certain respect for the club you used to play for. And he did, they have been on him. West Ham fans have been booing him. They have been on him since he left. I mean, I sort of get it. I understand from their perspective being disappointed that he wanted out. He didn't want to stay at West Ham. But, the West Ham could win the Europa League, maybe. But, Arsenal is in the Champions League, has a shot at the league title. Like, that's not going to happen for him at West Ham. So sure. I get him leaving. But I get their frustrations. But at the same time, as he comes off, there was a nice round of applause from the West Ham fans also, I think, in recognition of him, obviously his effort. I thought he had they all had excellent games, but I thought he had an excellent game. A nice round of applause from the crowd as well, sort of for the goal, and sort of probably, I think, a little bit in recognition of the lack of celebration. Or maybe the stadium was empty of West Ham fans and it was just the Arsenal people cheering at that point. I don't know.
Certainly a lot of empty seats. I did notice that. Yeah.
I get it. I get it, but it is funny.
Yeah. So, the first round of substitutions brought on Reece Nelson, Eddie Nketiah, Mohamed El-Neni. So it's good to see El-Neni. We haven't seen him in a while. Nketiah and Reece Nelson, we've seen them here and there the past couple months. But then it was the next round that Ben White came off, Martinelli came off, and we got Cedric and Nwaneri. So that was...
We have the victory cigar, Cedric Suarez. Light them up, boys. This one's over. I have to say, we didn't mention this before. Our bench was kind of thin. Honestly, outside of Nketiah and Reece Nelson, there wasn't a lot on there. I mean, El-Neni's a nice player, but hasn't really played much. I don't think he's played much at all this season. Cedric gets a lot of flack from the fan base for being a not good. Cedric can play a game here or there, and you'll live. Obviously, we have many better options, but apparently Tomiyasu wasn't available. Jesus was hurt. Jorginho was apparently didn't practice all week. He had picked up a knock in the Liverpool game. Who else was there? Smith Rowe apparently got Tomiyasu. Smith Rowe apparently got hurt in practice this week. So we were a little light on the bench. If this was a game where if it was say 1-1, coming into the 75th minute, or maybe even we were down a goal, this could have been a dicey one, to not have too many in the way of change of pace guys. We were definitely thin on Sunday. And so obviously it was nice to be able to, one, not have to worry about that, because it turns out we were fine. We didn't need them. But also instead we saw we saw got El Nini for the first time in a while. Obviously, we got Cedric, and then of course, as you mentioned, 17-year-old Ethan Nwaneri.
Yeah.
That is, I'm sorry, wait, no, it's
almost 17.
Almost, that's almost 16. He is 16 years old, and that's his second Premier League game.
Yeah.
I mean, good for him.
Something, yeah.
Good for him to get in. And he had a couple nice moments there. I think he had a shot or two. I think also like picked up a foul like his first time, like within 10 seconds of coming on the field. So yeah, okay. But yeah, I mean, good to see we got a chance for him. There's some talk about this as well, right? About young players and their development and when to bring them on. Do they get a chance to play in the league? Have we had some opportunities to bring them on? Perhaps, maybe. 6-0 up against West Ham. Yeah, and especially with the bench we had, yeah, that was fine. And it's kind of a reward for the work he's obviously been putting in with the youth teams, in training with the youth teams, and probably a little bit. I'm sure he and some of those other guys who are the youth players who are on the bench have gotten to train with the senior team as well. So I think that was a good opportunity for him to be able to come on and get some time too. He didn't come on, he didn't come on in the 87th minute for a little bit of stoppage time. He came on. Yeah, well, what we see was that 77th.
82nd, yeah. He played, 77th minute.
He played 15 minutes. That's a good amount of time in a Premier League game, especially for a young guy. So that's nice to see. And I mean, he couldn't score, so I guess we should probably sell him. But not guy kid. But yeah,
he was showing up at interesting places. Like he didn't seem intimidated by being the youngest player on the pitch. I was impressed. I'd be happy to see more of him the next time that we're up by 5 or 6 goals.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as we said, a lot of circumstances go into that. Of course, really, I think that the score of the game and the progress of the game, the kind of as we said, the weaknesses or the missing pieces from our bench. So there's a lot of little bits and pieces where you can say, okay, I can see how this happens. It's not a thing that's generally going to happen a lot, but there may be some opportunities looking forward, especially as we start to come into the stretch run of the season. We have a week until our next game on Saturday, but then starting next week we're back in the Champions League, and hopefully looking at about 2 games a week. Hopefully getting towards the end of the season into April and May, because it means we go deep in the Champions League. But and you wonder if there's some opportunities for guys like Nwaneri or some of the other young kids who have been on the bench for a little while, or even just more opportunities for rotation. I mean, again, I know El Nini is not highly regarded. Cedric catches a lot of verbal flack from the fan base, but I mean, there might be some moments where you might want to have those guys available. And frankly, it was nice to have them available here. Ben White gets to come off, get a breather. Saka, is able to come off. He needs it. Declan Rice as well. Martinelli. I'm interesting lineup we ran out there, by the way, with Trossard and Martinelli. It felt like Trossard and Martinelli were kind of rotating back and forth between the wing and the center. Trossard was mostly in the middle, but I saw Martinelli popping up in the middle. And then, of course, Saka just does whatever he wants down the right-hand side.
And then at least one time, Martinelli was in the middle. Havertz was like on the left while he was in the middle. So they're interesting. That might be one of those types of things you're talking about where they've got different strategies that they've been working on that are starting to come together. That might be part of something like that.
And I think that gets too with Havertz again. He is there's a multi-dimensionality to him. Is he a forward player? Is he a midfielder? Sometimes that means he's going to get a little bit lost in the shuffle, right? We don't really know. We don't know what his role is. He doesn't know what his role is. He's still feeling things out. But sometimes that also means that he can modify what he's doing game to game, and sometimes even in the course of a game, and he becomes another body, and a big one too. He's a tall guy.
Right.
He becomes a big body that the defense has to sort of account for, and all of a sudden he pops up. A lot like we talked about, like Jesus, and I heard some of I remember that conversation because we haven't been able to see it a lot, but when Havertz and Jesus are on the pitch, sometimes they're kind of getting in each other's way a bit because they're both trying to drift around and find those spaces, and I think that's one. We talked about Rice being a better player after a year with Arteta and a year in the system. I suspect with Kai Havertz, it's going to be the same thing. You're going to find him sort of catching his breath. And again, we'd probably feel a lot better about these guys in general if Martinelli, Saka, and Odegaard were scoring more goals. They were way behind the pace on goals they had last year. Yeah, last year probably a little much more than you might expect from them, but they've been way below that this year. And so if they can, as we saw with Martinelli last week and Saka this week, if they can start scoring goals more regularly, that's how you win games.
Yeah. All right, well, I have one question that came up during this match I wanted to check with you on. So they'd been making a point of pointing out how Saka was at 49 goals for his career going into this match, and then he scored his 50th and then 51st and then 52nd goals. And they were using the term, he's at a half century, and and he's at a 49 assists or something like that so far, and he's almost at a half century. I've never heard century used to refer to anything other than years. And I was going to ask if these guys are nuts or if this is something that's common, but I actually looked up the definition first and saw definition 1 is, marking 100 years, a century. But there is apparently an alternate definition, like definition 2 or 3. Actually, it's 2. 3 is talking about a Roman soldier or
a centurion. Yeah.
Well, but they did use century in that context too. So I don't know if that's like multiple centurions or a century. I don't know, but but number 2 was in a sports context talking about a number of shots or goals or something like that. Do you know, is that a prescriptive or descriptive definition? Did sportscasters start using that term erroneously just to refer to a collection of 100 things, and then they descriptively made the definition that, or was the definition always that? That seems like a weird disjoint thing.
That's an interesting etymological question. I honestly have no idea. I suspect it's more like slang that sort of worked its way into the conversation.
Yeah.
In terms of the definition, but I think it's one of those that it doesn't take a whole lot of thought to understand what they're saying. A half century. Oh, it's 50. Oh, it's 50 goals. Okay. Yeah, I think it's just one of those. And it strikes me as a bit of a more of a Britishism, British English than American English, because I don't recall hearing that very much in the American English context.
Yeah.
Certainly not half century. I'm trying to rack my brain. Maybe I've heard century before, although half century feels like a very British phrase. Like you don't hear Americans talk about a half century too often, just in general, even referencing years. I don't think. As I say it out loud, maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's off the top of my head.
All right. So have you given any thought to who your player of the match would be?
I'm gonna go with. Well, I'll give you my runner-up, and then I'll give you the answer. I think the runner-up, I think a guy who we haven't really talked about, who I thought had a really nice game, was Martin Odegaard. For not scoring in the goals, I thought he was involved. He allowed us to do a lot of things. We definitely were making great use of the right-hand side, especially when the game was more or less in doubt. I mean, obviously a lot of that is going to be Saka, but we know Odegaard and Ben White are filling it with him. I thought Odegaard was generally very good. But I think all things considered, I think it has to be Declan Rice to sort of come in to West Ham, come back to West Ham, and start this time, obviously, the Carabao Cup. Not really. He came off the bench. I think he showed out. I think he continued to do Declan Rice things, got himself a pretty good goal, and got the reception he deserved coming off the field, and also getting to come off early because the game was going so well. He didn't need to play the full 90. So Declan Rice. Yeah,
so you sniped me, but that's okay. I agree with you. I mean, also just the set piece goals were him, right? Like that was his delivery. He had like really good placement into the box that allowed those headers to go in off of our defenders who are like killing it as far as like scoring goals. Gabriel, again, we had a Saliba goal. Like, this is really good. So yeah, I definitely agree with Declan Rice. We always want him to be player of the match, even in games where other people maybe deserve it more. He's just always someone worth talking about. I considered jokingly suggesting Nwaneri, but obviously he didn't make a meaningful contribution. He came in when all was said and done. But yeah, no, it has to be Rice. I think this match, just the venue and everything, his performance on top of the venue and everything else behind it. I think, I think you can't go wrong there. So,
and then, shout out to Saka for finally starting to score goals, and
exactly. That's the other thing. He scores a hat trick, right? And it's not even like
he got two.
Did he? I thought incling the penalty. I guess it was just the two. Okay,
yeah.
They thought he might. That's right. Okay,
yeah. Saka 2, Saliba, Gabriel, Trossard, and Rice.
Right. So yeah, I amended earlier what I said. Also, is the 50th and 51st, not the 52nd. So real time follow up. But yeah, it was. So yeah, I mean, he scores 2 goals, and it's not even like the most remarkable thing that we're talking about necessarily. So it's it was an all around good match. So what is coming up for next week?
For next week, as we said, this is just the one game. We will be at Burnley at Turf Moor to play Burnley. For years under Sean Dyche, Burnley was sort of the stereotypical rough 'em up Premier, old school English team that was going to give, a soft Arsenal side troubles. Then they got relegated and they fired Sean Dyche, and now they have Vincent Kompany, who is a delightful person and has tried to remake Burnley as a very Manchester City style play out of the back kind of club. That was really good for them in the Championship, where they were able to sort of just outpace the competition. They won the league easily last year. And now they're in the Premier League, trying to do the same thing with championship-level players, and it is not going well, and they will almost certainly be relegated. So, yeah, there is a world where this gets ugly, or maybe really pretty, depending on how you think about that. There's a world this goes really well for us, and we rack up some good results.
Yeah.
But obviously, the goal is to sort of keep the pressure on. Especially as we head into the next week. We've got 2 games, Porto in the Champions League and then Newcastle, 2 big ones. So this is a real good opportunity to make sure we keep pace with Liverpool and City, because we are very much in a title race right now, and we're going to need to keep pace.
Yeah, and City still has that game in hand, right?
Yes, they also have that.
So yeah, that's I hate when that happens, because it gives you such a false sense of security. Like, you miss that sometimes, and I wish they'd just play it and let the table make sense.
I'll say this: if we win every game from here on out, which would include us beating, if we win every game from here on out, which would include us beating City, well, it wouldn't guarantee us winning the league because Liverpool's ahead of us if they win out. But if we win out from here, we'll definitely finish ahead of them. So,
yeah. A lot can happen. We're still barely past the midway mark, so a lot to look forward to.
Beat Burnley, and then we can talk about what's next.
And Burnley, by the way, is going to be on USA Network, so it will not be streaming same day on Peacock. But NBC Sports, even if they annoy me sometimes, it will be there same day. So, all right. Well, thanks for joining us at Gooner U. If you're watching on YouTube, you can also listen to our show on Apple, Spotify, and some other places. If you're only listening, try watching us on YouTube next time. Wherever you watch or listen, please like, subscribe, rate, or review the show. Tell your friends. Don't forget also, you can stick around after the episode to hear our after show, where we talk about a wide variety of topics. Find us on Twitter with a link in the description to get updates and ask questions. Again, thanks to our sponsor, Liquid IV. You can find them with our special link in the description. Again, my name is Dove, and you can find me on Twitter at Dove Frankel. With me, as always, is Keith, and you can find him in a pub watching Arsenal matches.
Once more with feeling 6-0 to the Arsenal.
All right, so before we get into anything else, I want to try and always do show titles first in the post show. So I got a decent selection here. What are you thinking? Want me to read them off?
I don't know. Any of them standing out to you necessarily at first?
I think toying with them. I like Inspired to Rant. I think that was funny.
Yeah. I kind of like The Most Dangerous Saka. I don't know why.
Yes. It's a call out to literature, right? The Most Dangerous Game. I like that too. We do tend to have like pop culture references. That's a very classy cultural reference. Victory Cigar, that made me laugh.
Yeah, I think either The Most Dangerous Saka or Victory Cigar, honestly. Yeah, Inspired to Rant, it just doesn't doesn't do it for me. But
it doesn't fit the tenor of the show or the match as much. Yeah. So these are two possibilities. Most dangerous Saka victory cigar. I don't know. I think I don't know. I think victory cigar is a little more unique. Might cause inquiring minds to be more curious what led to that phrase. Or is also potentially a minor spoiler, which I try to avoid. You put the word victory
at this point,
I know nobody but me cares about that.
Well, I mean, by the time this is actually coming out, like at that point,
I know
you need to know what
in my mind, there is a fan out there that waits to watch our show waits to watch the match until our show is ready, and they watch the match and then listen to our commentary afterwards. In my mind, that is theoretically possible, and I would hate to spoil the match for that person. Who may never exist.
I don't think that's in the year 2024. I don't believe that's something we really would necessarily be. If you're a fan, you're kind of. I mean, you're what 24 hours after you're not exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, sometimes there have been a couple times where it's been 2 days, and where I end up getting into trouble is when I need to do something for our show, like editing. Like if we record on a Monday and there's a match on a Tuesday, and then I'm like editing on a Wednesday, and I need to go onto YouTube to get like a link to the highlights or something. That's where it gets tricky for me sometimes. But generally, I do okay because I'm just not on Twitter. I'm not like reading anything but tech news, like in political news, like during the day for the most part. So that works for me.
Yeah.
So yeah. The most dangerous Saka. I do like that a lot. What do you think?
I could go either way.
All right, I'll leave them both bolded. I'll flip a coin. I'll use random.org and flip a coin. We'll pick one of the two.
There we go.
But it was funny when I first went to watch the match. So because I am watching replays very often, I go into the app with the goal of get to the thing as quickly as possible so I don't see something, because I know NBC Sports and Peacock, they do put like headlines on there in addition to just the replays, just like team logos and stuff like that, right? And it's happened to me before where I've caught like, West Ham defeat Arsenal, whatever. I think that was a specific one. So this time I go into NBC Sports and I see right away, West Ham and Arsenal, click. Right. And I start watching it and it's like, okay. I missed the first few seconds after the kickoff. That's okay. Whatever. I was looking elsewhere. And then I look up the clock and it's like 8 minutes. Oh no. And I'm thinking it was like me doing something wrong on the Vision Pro, right? Like that I messed something up and seeked forward. Right. So I just like send it back to the beginning, start over again. And I'm like, just still kind of getting my window set up and listening. And then again, I look at the clock and it's like 8 minutes, like, oh no. The thing that I clicked on was extended highlights. Yep. That was what they were putting, and it makes sense from their point of view to put that front and center, because most people watching after the fact are not going to watch the full replay like I do. Most people are going to watch the highlights. But yeah, so I had to scroll through and find my way to the full match replay. But it was spoiled to me that, it's funny. I didn't see the score. I was only seeing the clock. But as I thought about it more, I knew it was spoiled to me that it was a scoreless first 8 minutes, because if there were a goal, it would have been shown in the highlights. So I knew by there not being a goal shown that there was no goal in the first 8.5 minutes or whatever. But yeah, it's fine. It could have been a lot worse. But no, so what I also wanted to tell you about is for next weekend, for Saturday the 17th, I scheduled an appointment at the Apple Store to do a Vision Pro demo. Even though I already own one, right? The reason I'm doing that is because as I'm reading people's accounts of getting the demos in store, there are some things on the demo units in the Apple Store that are not available to the public yet, including sports demos. So I would be able to do the basketball, I believe soccer, and I think it was baseball was the third one, but do those demos. And I'll probably do nothing else. Like I'll explain to them, I already have one. I want to see this because it's a professional curiosity. I have a podcast, whatever. Call myself a sports journalist. But so yeah, I have an interest in seeing the sports demo, and so yeah, I'll be able to report back on that next week for next week's show. So and yeah, that will be President's Day. Actually, is that an issue for you next week?
No. It's Monday. Yeah, we only get the only days we get off are Martin Luther King Day, which is the first Monday of the semester, and frankly, actually, we had a big ice storm, so we went off anyway. Closed anyway this year. Other than that, we get spring break, and then we get spring holiday, which is it's Good Friday, but
right.
We're a public school, we can't say that.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, other than that, that's it. That's it as far as holidays in the spring semester.
Cool.
So,
right.
Although I mean, this week, tomorrow is Shrove Tuesday or Fat Tuesday.
Okay, yeah, that name I've never heard for it. Yeah,
Shrove, that's I believe the actual religious name for it. But Mardi Gras is my brother in Louisiana does get off for that because it's Louisiana.
Oh,
okay. And,
yeah.
Or they I believe so they get a break during that. We don't get any other holidays off. There is a push. There has been a push within the state to make Cesar Chavez Day a paid holiday. Which, given it's March 31st, I'm all in favor of taking March 31st off.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Birthday.
Yeah.
But I feel like that means I'm not allowed to participate in that conversation because I have an obvious conflict of interest.
Yeah, that's funny. I guess I'll hold my thoughts on whether Chavez should have a holiday, but yeah, it's that would be cool if your birthday became a holiday every year.
Look, I'm about to say I'm all for taking that day off.
Yeah, whatever the reason, I could see you celebrating.
Let me rephrase that. I'm all in favor of people taking. I can take the day if I feel.
Everyone else taking the day off, right?
Yeah, everyone else. You know what? You guys do it too. I will allow that.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like as I'm looking back through my notes, every time apparently. And I have to imagine this just has something to do with Apple's extreme privacy focus. Like they don't share data across things in ways that other companies do a lot of times, and it's almost always for good reasons, but still frustrating sometimes. But every platform on which I open our show notes has its own set of dictionary building. So all the players' names that I've been marking as part of the dictionary this past almost 2 years now, year and a half. That's mostly been on my iPhone as I've been taking the notes on my iPhone most of the time. So now it's now I'm going in and I'm seeing the keeper's name, which is Areola, that was getting auto-corrected to something annoying every single time. And it's I'm not even with the iPhone, I was always looking as I typed because you don't really have a choice. But now that I'm doing it on the Vision Pro with a keyboard in my lap, I'm mostly touch typing and then just looking at the action on the screen while I'm typing. And then I hit enter. And then it's not until I happen to go back and look at a previous line that I see what it's done. So forgive anything like that and try to make sense of it if you need to.
Yeah, it's all right. As long as you can figure out what the deal is.
Yeah. All right. Well, it looks like I lost you for a second. We're supposed to have a major winter storm coming through. I don't think it's starting yet. It's not supposed to start until morning, but I got a preemptive text from the cable company. You may lose internet, which is encouraging.
Well, we did have just a brief moment. You had just disappeared there on me. And
yeah, I saw that.
And
that was me. I got a message that I lost the connection. So I think that's the internet trying to tell us we should wrap it up. So
yeah, no, we'll call it a night. We'll call it a night.
All right.
Until next time.
Cool. Sounds good. Have a good one. Bye.
See you.